I was thinking about preaching about ice fishing this morning a little bit, but I think everyone's already cold enough this morning, so I'm going to switch up my example to use something maybe a little more warm, and that's golf. So we dream about green grass and sun and sunburn and humidity and mosquitoes. Maybe the cold doesn't sound so bad after all, right? Maybe we just move out of Minnesota. Maybe that's the possibility. But something that's interesting in golf is I remember when I started to learn how to golf, and I still am. I'm still. It's a sport and activity, I guess you could say. They're always trying to get better at. And one of the things that you do is you watch other people. You watch their swing and you try to imitate their swing. Now you could pretend that you're really, really good, and you could try to be like Dustin Johnson or Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods and try to imitate their swing. But that's just not a good idea. No one here is as good as they are. We can't do a swing like them. So instead what you want to do when you're imitating someone's swing is maybe go golfing with someone and watch. How do they hit a drive? How do they hit a draw? How do they hit a fade? What are they doing? And you start watching, and then even this is what I do when I go golfing. I'm just like, okay, they do this, and it gets really hard sometimes. But you start to practice, and so you're imitating that one move. Or when it comes to chipping or putting, whatever it is, it's like they do this really, really well, and I want to imitate them in doing this. And what happens when you do this is you yourself start to be like them, at least when it comes to golfing. So that's a good thing. Of course, today we hear about imitation, and we hear even better thing than golf. We have St. Paul, who says to the people of Corinth. Remember, the people of Corinth, the city of Corinth was a messed up town. When Paul got there, and when Paul left, it still was a messed up town. It wasn't a town, it was a big city. And I've said this before, and the people of Corinth was kind of like a modern day New Orleans Mardi Gras, but 5 times worse. That's how bad Corinth was. And so when Paul arrived, he really tried to preach the message of Christ to very few amount of people that would listen to him, but he gave his heart to them. He gave everything to them. Even after he left, of course, now we have the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, at least a couple letters there. He writes back to them. He writes back to his children. And he says to them this very unique line, which kind of sounds egocentric at first. Be imitators of me. But then what does he say? As I am of Christ. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. And how did Paul imitate Christ, by the way? Well, we look at his life and we can kind of see a parallel life of Jesus. Paul gave up everything to follow Jesus. Jesus, well, he takes on humanity. He humbles himself to share in our divinity. Jesus is a great preacher, preaching to thousands of people, and on the Sermon on the Mount and other places. Paul is the same way, and baptizing and doing other things as well. Jesus is able to heal those who are sick, even those who are dead. Paul does the same thing. Jesus, of course, dies, is crucified for us. Paul, we know, is martyred. So Paul can say this, be imitators of me, because he truly is imitating Christ. And that's what we want to do as well. We want to imitate Christ in everything that we do. Although sometimes, just like when it comes to that golf example, that seems like it's way too hard. I mean, there's Jesus, here we are, all right? And for golf, here's Dustin Johnson, number 1 player in the world, here we are. And so when Paul says, be imitators of me, it's kind of that in-between stage. And there's other people in our life as well that we can try to imitate because they're trying to be like Christ as well. And hopefully you have some of those people in your life. Maybe it's a grandparent. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a saint that you've grown in huge devotion to be able to imitate what they did, because what they were doing as well was imitating Christ. And we all do this, by the way. We all imitate other people. You know, I think we look at even how we dress, how we speak, how we act is usually an imitation of someone else. Advertising is all about this, right? If you do this, then you can be like this person. You know, go back to the commercial by Nike, probably the most famous one. I want to be like who? I want to be like Mike, like Michael Jordan. Really? Will any of us ever be like him? No. Should any of us be like him anyways? Probably not. Is he the best person to imitate? Let's find other people in our life to imitate, than celebrities, than athletes, than influencers, whatever that is that I hear about in the news every once in a while. And let's imitate those people in our life that truly are living a Christ-centered life. And when you do this, what's going to happen is your spiritual life is going to grow exponentially. It's going to grow so much because you're following in the way of Christ. And then eventually, hopefully, when we do this, other people will imitate us. Watch they're doing already. Children imitate their parents. We see this over and over again. Your children will act like you. Your children will speak like you. Your children will use the same words that you use. So make sure to use your words wisely, by the way. And your children will imitate you in your prayer life. They will. If you have a prayer life, if you have a life that's dedicated to Christ, your children, your grandchildren, your friends, your coworkers will follow in your example. And so please make sure to imitate Christ. Imitate those who have gone before us as well, the saints, your relatives, and your friends. I want to end this homily today with a prayer which talks about imitation, and it's by a saint named Saint John Gabriel Perboyre. I don't know much about him, but I ran across this prayer. He was a saint in the 19th century. He was a missionary in China. He was actually martyred for his faith. He was crucified, just like Jesus was crucified as well. But he has this beautiful prayer about imitation and how we're called to try to ask the Lord for his grace so we may imitate as well. O my divine Savior, transform me into yourself. May my hands be the hands of Jesus. May my tongue be the tongue of Jesus. Grant that every faculty of my body may serve only to glorify you. Above all, transform my soul and all its powers, so that my memory, my will, and my affection may be the memory, will, and affections of Jesus. I pray you to destroy in me all that is not of you. Grant that I may live but in you, by you, and for you, so that I may truly say with St. Paul, I live, now not I, but Christ lives in me.